Jai Baba, everybody. We're having a little bit of an inconvenience. We can't get connected to audio, but we're going to be able to hear him through the phone. So it may not be the best, but we'll do the best we can. Let's see. Today we're starting session 18. As always. And where are we starting today, Ward?
You know, I've sort of forgotten on my, let's see.
I think we're on 24, aren't we? Is that right?
Let's see.
January.
Did we do this one? I don't know. Did we do this?
No, I think we looked at it, but I don't think we did it.
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe we got to the end of this. Did we get to the end of the sixth plane, seventh plane? I think we did.
Yes,
didn't we?
yes.
Mirabodi's my place.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Okay. So now we're going to have, they're going to be shorter for the most part. So he's finished the 7 planes, and now he's going to look at, we're calling it modalities of knowing in infinite intelligence. This is called Chaitanya. So let's see.
Oh, it's session 17, Elizabeth says. I could have sworn I did a session 17. Oh, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Okay, so we could have somebody start to read.
Melissa, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
You need to zoom in. Ward.
There
you
we go. So shall I read the table first?
Yeah.
Crypt Cabin, Tuesday, 3rd of January, 1928. From Atma unconscious to Atma self-conscious. Table 6, evolution, the path, and the modalities of knowing. Would you like me to read in horizontal lines? Or down? Maybe down.
Well,
Yeah, maybe read the rubrics on top and then read down.
Yeah, oh, I got it. Maybe the left half down and then the right half down. So under
Yeah.
evolution, the top line is Atma, form and mode of knowing. So the form, when the form is metal, there's no mode of knowing listed. Similarly for vegetable, and similarly for worm, no mode of knowing shown. Then when we get to fish, there is finite instinct. Bird, less finite instinct. Animal, instinct. And human, intellect. On the paths, on the first plane, the mode of knowing is inspiration. Second plane, revelation. Third plane, insight. Fourth plane, intuition. Fifth plane, illumination and ecstasy. Sixth plane, divine sight. And seventh plane, realization. From table 6 above, it can be gathered that Atma, in its journey to realize self, has to pass through 14 states, which can be subdivided into the first 7 and the last 7. At the outset, at the point of the first at in the top left-hand column, Atma is unconscious, or virtually so. If we descend down that left-hand column, at the level of the at the bottom row to the left of the word human, Atma is fully conscious. And over to the right, next to the number 7, marking the 7th plane, the A in a circle signifies the Atma in the state of superconsciousness. In this way, in its progress from its original unconsciousness to the self-consciousness of realization, the Atma, as said, has to cross through 14 states. 7 of these are downwards and sulat, obverse in their trajectory, while 7 are upwards and ulat, reverse. And now to read the footnote. The natural process of evolution leads downward through the accumulation of sulat, obverse sanskaras, in the sense that the progress from stone to human beings, to human, brings with it greater and greater remove and estrangement from the original God state as the accumulation of natural sanskaras increases, while the upwards movement, in which ulat sanskaras annihilate the sulat sanskaras, effects a return to God and culminates in God realization. For further discussion of sulat and ulat sanskaras, see Infinite Intelligence, pages 260 to 70. Table 6 here, and the manuscript source tables on which it is based, represent both evolution and the spiritual path as downwards movements. Perhaps part of the intention here is to suggest a parallelism between the processes of evolution and the spiritual ascent. But in many of Meher Baba's charts of this type, evolution moves downward and the path upwards, as is suggested in the language of the text here. See, for example, chart 4 in God Speaks. Here's my asterisk.
Reverse.
Now, see, Atma itself is one and the same everywhere. It is the same individual who passes through all 14 states. And throughout all these states, Atma uses knowing as its medium or sadhan. Or, to make this point clearer, when it undertakes to experience the world through metal form, Atma takes knowing as its medium, as it does through worm and all the forms following. And in the end, Atma knows self through this same knowing. Now, this knowing varies according to the form and plane. Would you like to read that?
Shadir ane bhumika pramane jani vale.
And then there's another little note. Shall I read that one with the dagger?
Let me see, we probably can skip it, yeah.
Okay, knowing changes according to body and plane. Okay.
Yeah.
In the first 7 states, comprising the evolutionary descent, Atma acquires 7 different forms. But after that, with the achievement of the human form, no further form arises. But instead, the 7 different planes give birth to the Atma's new different states. In the early stages of the evolutionary phase, as far as the worm form, this knowing is almost non-existent. In fish form, it manifests as finite instinct, Kadrafi Samaj. In bird form, this same knowing becomes less finite instinct. In the animal form, knowing manifests fully as instinct, Pernya, While in human, shall I read that? Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay.
So was it Pernia that was urging incitement and impulse?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
word occurs in
It comes up
Gujarati.
in Infinite Intelligence also. He uses it there for, or maybe Tiffin lectures for instinct.
While in human form, it has developed into intellect, or buddhi, with full consciousness. Throughout this entire process, the knowing differs and varies in accordance with the form through which it manifests itself. Here, Sri referred again to a simile and demonstration which he had given on an earlier day, in which an object was viewed through a hole in a piece of cardboard. The sight which one sees changes according to the size of the hole through which one is looking. He resumed.
We can skip the note.
Okay. He resumed, now in the human form, if the Atma has not yet turned, and by this I mean the turning of the mind towards the planes, Marg, it has to take birth and rebirth again and again. All of this within the final limit of the human and the forms below it. That is, not proceeding towards the planes. Atma goes on turning through any of the 7 forms, like an ox in an oil mill. See Baba's lecture on the 27th of October, 1927, where Baba used this same analogy of the ox in the oil mill. The text here seems to indicate that having evolved to the stage of having intellect as one's knowing, which Baba identifies with the human form, one can take birth in the lower form of evolution. This contradicts Meher Baba's standard teaching on the subject of reincarnation, according to which the soul, having achieved the human form, never incarnates in lower forms, except in the exceptional case of a fall from the 4th plane. In these early years, however, Baba had sometimes indicated that retrograde incarnation was possible in rather rare cases, apart from the misuse of powers on the 4th plane. Returning to the text, throughout this reincarnationary cycle, Atma itself remains the same, and the knowing also continues within this same limit of the human intellect. But if the Atma does indeed turn thereafter, though again Atma itself remains unchanged, and the human form too stays as it was, the knowing transforms according to the plane on which it is situated. For example, in the 1st plane, though both Atma and the human form remain as they were when the soul was gross conscious, the knowing which had been intellect becomes inspiration. Now, what we call inspiration comes in 2 kinds: the worldly and material inspiration, and the divine inspiration. Worldly inspiration is what poets, philosophers, and great thinkers access. By contrast, the divine inspiration of the 1st plane is of a sort that has some real knowledge in it.
Manje hat tode yan rahate. This is Marathi. Baba did usually mean Marathi, meaning that in it a little knowledge is left.
But always remember, these 14 states are mediums, sadhans, for the knowing of self on the part of Atma. When it accomplishes this, when Atma knows itself, these 14 states vanish. Then only two things remain, Atma and knowing. But here in the realization state, the knowing, knower, and known are all one. So the game is over. Kel Katan. But until realization, the necessity for these mediums persists.
So that's that one.
Before we go on to the next one, Ward, I just want to make sure you have your charger nearby. We don't want to lose your for your cell phone.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good. So let's have Alan read the next one. You okay, Alan?
Ready?
Go.
Crypt Cabin, Wednesday, 4th of January, 1928. Over the last few days, we discussed the planes and the skies. Now, along with the planes and skies, let us bring the states into picture. The states of pilgrims in the planes. The first plane, inspiration. Here, the initiate pilgrim remains for hours together, immersed in an ocean of dazzling light. This is what we really mean by the word inspiration. Spiritu. A throbbing, a burst of energy, an inspiration, a flash of thought. Spiritu is common to several Indic languages. Baba discusses Spiritu in Tiffin lectures.
Hang on. Yeah, we lost Ward.
I'm sorry, but the person you called has a...
Ward, can you hang up and call again? Call me again. Now he's here. He just lost the phone connection.
Sorry.
So he must have lost his connection. Ah. Okay, I'm running out of ideas, guys. Oh, here he comes. He must be back. Okay. Ward, we lost you there for a minute.
Me again?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
All right. So he just finished reading the note at the bottom.
Okay. So we're up here, the worldly inspiration. Is that how far we got?
Yeah, did I lose Alan?
No, I'm
Okay.
waiting for everything to settle.
Yeah, okay.
We got to the asterisk indicating a note on Spiritu.
You can go ahead then.
The worldly inspiration, as it is called, which poets and great thinkers and philosophers sometimes tap into, has absolutely no connection with this higher inspiration that awakens at the outset of the spiritual path. Second plane revelation, by means of the Sukshma Drishti, or subtle sight, which the pilgrim now possesses, the subtle world is revealed to him like an open book. This second plane chap pays less heed to the gross world, and his eyes are found to be red like blood. This is the sign by which such a one can be recognized. Third plane, insight. Here, the advanced pilgrim radiates through his subtle eyes a light into the gross and thence into the subtle eyes of others. And by this means, he reads everyone's innermost mind. The sign of such a one is this: his eyes are always swollen. Sujleli. The eyes of others are not always swollen like his are. Tasa, word I'll have to surrender.
Yusrichya Nastat Sadodit Sujleli. I think that's Marathi. Yeah. It's funny, Baba's using a bunch of Marathi.
Yeah.
All this I know, and so I tell you. Fourth plane, intuition. On this plane, a chap can raise the dead. As we've said before, his eyes are most piercing. Bekdek. If he were to gaze directly at something for even a minute, it would break with a crashing and tearing sound.
Tadai Netuti Jai.
For this reason,
Get the note. Yeah.
For this reason, he never looks at anything steadily. His eyes are always flickering. Sri here gave an example of a yogi who unintentionally gazed at an ox for a moment, and its belly was blown apart.
Jeez.
But remember, all of this is a dream, bahas. As we have said yesterday, these 14 states are only the means, saran. Once the game is finished, they have no further use. But until one achieves realization, one has to go on passing through all these states and stages. Mark the fun. Atma arrives here at the human form automatically in accordance with the theory of evolution. And having achieved this, it stops. It never progresses further except with the aid of a guru. And even if no Sadguru turns him and he proceeds on by his own efforts, generally he stops at the very first sky, believing this to be the goal. Tomorrow, we will move on to the fifth and sixth planes, and I will show you through an example that one has to pass through these stages. There is no remedy. It cannot be avoided. When one has transcended all of these states, then all of it is revealed as nothing but illusion. Boss.
Okay.
Wow, that was a short one.
Yeah, you can see there are a series of short ones now.
Well, thank you, Alan. Let's have Marion Lewis.
Trying to unmute. There, unmute. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. This is the different, shall we, Crypt Cabin, Thursday, 5th January, 1928. The different states of pilgrims in the different planes continued. Fifth plane, illumination and ecstasy. The fifth plane is the plane of spiritual knowledge, or Atma Janani Bhuvan. This marks the beginning of real bliss, or Anand. On the fifth plane, this bliss is termed Atmanand, the bliss of self. Let us now survey and enumerate the different modalities of bliss, or Anand, that are experienced between the lower forms of evolution and the realization of God.
Vishayanand.
Vishayanand, or the bliss of sensual object enjoyment. This Anand
Probably the
is,
note is worth reading.
oh, all right. And there's a footnote. Visay, a word common to several Indic languages, means an object of the senses, mind, or passions, something apprehensible through any of the modes of knowing. In Meher Baba's usage, it appears to mean a gross object apprehensible through the gross senses. This Anand is experienced by Jivatmas from the fish through the gross conscious human forms. Chitnanand, not sure that's correct, or the bliss of reflection. This bliss is experienced only by human beings. And there's a note. Chintan means thought, reflection, meditation. It is hard to know exactly what Baba meant by this phase. Chintananand, since his other writings and discourses have so far shown no other discussions of exactly this point. So it's Chintananand, or the bliss of reflection. This bliss is experienced only by human beings. 3, Yoganand, the bliss of yoga. Yogis experience this kind of bliss when in the samadhi state. This bliss is proper to those who have achieved the human form, but who have not yet been turned. Now comes our dear Premanand, the bliss of love. The fortunate one who acquires this kind of Anand wins the chance of turning. Now remember, the states on the first 4 planes are called inspiration, or Spurti, revelation, or Suksma Drishti, insight, Antaryan, and intuition, Gupta Yanan. And there is a footnote. Note that the 4 states listed in this sentence, since they associate with the first 4 planes, do not correspond to the 4 varieties of bliss listed earlier in this talk. Since the first of those 4 bliss states is experienced even by fish, who are gross conscious. Since the next 3 bliss states, Chintananand, Yoganand, and Premanand, evidently occur prior to turning. Perhaps Baba means to indicate that these modes of bliss too belong to human consciousness on the gross plane. On the other hand, according to the chapter, The Sevenfold Veil, in God Speaks, pages 67 to 74, the turning and passing inward through the doors of the 7 openings in the face, which correspond to the 5 organs of sense. While this process begins in the first plane, is completed only on the 5th. Perhaps this is what Baba means by turning here. In that case, Chintananand, Yoganand, and Premanand, any or all of these, might designate modes of bliss on the first 4 subtle planes of consciousness. And picking up five. But the non-Anand that we were speaking about earlier is the real Anand, the Arif, who has arrived in the fifth plane. He who experiences this Atmanan is continuously engrossed and absorbed in the light of God and experiences the Anand as ecstasy. His eyes generally droop, half open and half closed. Let's see. I'm not sure. Adi, Ugadi, Adi, Band. And for the most part, he remains naked, Nagna, or nude like a Diganibar, or naked ascetic. Sadgurus too, at times, when they get the huki, go naked. A good example of this is Duniwala Baba Sahib, who though naked is a realized and perfect being. And there's a note. Dada Duniwale, as he is often known, was a much celebrated spiritual personality of Jalali temperament who kept a Duni fire on the banks of the Narmada River in Khandwa, a town in what today is Madhya Pradesh, about 280 kilometers driving distance to the southeast of Bhopal. He died in November 1930, and the Hindu temple, Dada Darbar, was established in his memory. Bava is a variant form of Baba. Baba. His disciple, Harihar Dadaji, was, according to the Wayfarers, page 276, the charge man of Khandwa. Mayor Baba contacted him in 1941.
Okay.
Shri
Okay, so
Shri Apostoli.
Shri Upasani.
Upasani.
Mhm.
Maharaj, too, remains almost in a state of nakedness, though he is perfect. But this fifth plane chap, to return to him, actually sees God, but only partially. That is, he sees God as his own Atma, within, but not as the universe without. 6. Here on the sixth plane, the adept pilgrim experiences Purnanand, complete bliss. This sixth plane chap not only sees God as his own Atma, but in the universe as well. In short, wherever he turns his gaze, he sees God. But the poor chap is not yet one with God. Rather, he finds himself as the seer and God as the seen. The sign of the sixth planar is this: his eyes are always staring. Tagar,
Tagar Tiki Nejoti.
but he seems to be looking at all things at the same time. And there is a, shall I read the footnote?
Yeah.
That phrase is an idiomatic Gujarati phrase, which means something like staring vacantly. He gazes unblinkingly. One person thinks he is looking at me, and another thinks he is looking at him. A third thinks this too, and so on. All believe that the eyes of the sixth plane saint are turned on them. There are some Sadgurus, but only a few who are like this. Some of these advanced saints in the sixth plane are in the state of Gauss. a Persian term denoting one who can separate his limbs from his body. This is a fact. Samor diste, plainly visible. But
You can
remember,
skip the notes, I think.
oh, all right. This is a fact. Samor diste, plainly visible. But remember, this chap on the sixth plane is almost God, and so he is almost free. Yet a deep valley divides the sixth plane from the seventh. So I have been saying that even if through his own efforts, one somehow reaches the sixth plane, and such cases are rare.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Indeed, are rare indeed. Still, he can't take this final step from the sixth plane to the seventh without the aid of a Sadguru. But despite this, the sixth plane chap gets power, knowledge, and bliss direct from Paramatma on the seventh plane.
Shakti, Anand, Vagyan, direct Paramatmak, Kadun Milto. I think again, yeah, this is again Marathi.
Seven, now we come to the end, the real end, which is our dear old Paramatma. The Anand that Paramatma enjoys is called, said, Brahmanand, the bliss of Brahma. The one who has achieved the seventh plane actually is Paramatma, or Sat Chitanand. And it is for this reason that Sai Baba's followers could shout, Sat Chitanand Sadguru Sai Baba Ki Jai. Similarly, Upasani Maharaj has been given the title Purna Parabrahma, complete transcendent God. He is God, he is man, he is everything, yet he is nothing but God. Thus Krishna said, leave off Paramatma, forget about the Dev and all the rest of it, and instead surrender to me, because I myself am Paratpar Paramatma and Brahma, God all in all. 8, finally, the Anand that the realized Shivatma inherits after descending from the state of perfection is called Anandanand or Sahajanand. So, dear boys, know that your luck is so good that it has brought you here to this place so close to this Paramatma, this all in all that I have been telling you about. Create love and get your due. Get me.
Okay, that's that one. I think we can keep going, huh?
Yeah, sure. Let's get Elizabeth. Come on, you trooper, Elizabeth.
Now, let me give you an analogy for the journey of the Atma through its 14 stages. But before embarking on the analogy itself, we need an introduction. We'll begin with the evolutionary journey from stone to human, which can be correlated with the 5 toes of the human foot, as in the table below, table 7. Correlations
No, maybe
between
you should read the note. This warns
Okay.
about these 2 lectures.
Okay. I'll read slower, Mahu.
Thank you.
The source manuscripts for this lecture and the lecture that follows are riddled with lacunae at critical junctures, particularly at points where Baba seems to have identified key human body parts corresponding to the planes and asmans. Unfortunately, no textual grounds have offered themselves for the resolution of these ambiguities, which are identified and explained in the footnotes and endnotes. So,
Have these huge endnotes, which we won't read, but I just be warned that the keywords are often missing, and so there had to be a lot of guesswork here.
mhm. So in the table, on the left side is form in the evolutionary journey, and on the right, the toe of the human foot. And I'll read from left to right. So stone to worm forms corresponds to the little toe. Fish form to the fourth toe. Bird form to the third or middle toe. Animal form, the second toe nearest to the thumb toe. And the human form, the thumb toe.
By the way, do you recognize the foot?
Is that the one we bow to?
I don't know which photo it is, but it's Baba's foot.
Understand this introductory series of stages properly. If you don't, you won't grasp the main analogy that follows. Now, beyond the thumb, we find no further toe. Likewise, no further form arises beyond the human. At this stage, having achieved the human form, the Atma now begins its advance through the planes of consciousness, as in figure 37 on the following page.
Let's just take a glance at it. It's there was no figure in the original. We put this in to try to help people through this. So these two lectures are going to show correlations between the planes and, in the next lecture, the skies and parts of the human body. And it seems to be focused on joints within the skeletal frame as best we could get it. So first is ankle, second is knee, third is hip, fourth is shoulder, fifth is throat, sixth is the point between the eyes, and seventh is crown. There were some of the keywords were left completely blank. So we're not 100% sure about all of that. Okay, sorry.
All three of these body parts are bones, so keep the skeletal structure of the human body in mind.
Oh,
We
we jumped
missed
over
that.
the first station, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
The first station or plane, which follows the reversal, corresponds to the ankle. The second station or plane corresponds to the knee. The third station or plane follows. Do you want to read the footnotes and the dagger?
Should we read these? Let's just not go into it. It's just saying that there are a lot of problems in identifying these. Let's just say that much without going into the details of it.
All three of these body parts are bones, so keep the skeletal structure of the human body in mind. The next station is the fourth, associated with the shoulder and the armpit.
We
And
can
here
fix this note also, it's talking about more problems of the text.
Okay. And here the spiritual pilgrim meets a great check in his progress. How so? At this stage, the 7 cities or powers come into play. They correspond to the 5 fingers and the 2 major joints, elbow and wrist. If the pilgrim refrains from the use of these powers, then progress on the spiritual journey proceeds onwards unimpeded. But if they are used, gradually the center of movement descends from the shoulder joint through the upper and lower parts of the arm and on to the fingers. Since from the fingertips, this movement has no
Pathway.
pathway by which to continue within the human body, it tumbles all the way down to the earth, which is to say, to the stone form. This homology, associating the planes with parts of the human body, clearly shows why the traveler in the fourth plane falls all the way down to stone form if he uses his powers.
So let's take another look at this figure. The third plane, they didn't say hip, but we're guessing that that's the word that was missing. So first plane is ankle, second is knee, third, we're guessing is the hip. The fourth, there are confusions about it, but it's probably the shoulder. And he's saying here from the fourth, these joints correspond to the 7 main occult powers. And if you descend down that way, and if you fall, there's nothing between the fingers and the little toe, which is stone form, right? So this is corresponding to what, the spiritual progress to the fourth plane, and you fall to human form. It's shown right there in the human body. You remember that in the fourth plane there's a sharp curve. Baba doesn't mention it here, but there is a curve you can see going to the fifth plane, which seems to be at the Adam's apple. The sixth plane seems to correspond to this point, the third eye, and the seventh plane is up there on the crown of the head. So, okay, want to keep reading?
Mark too that the powers of the first 3 planes are minuscule compared with these of the fourth that we are speaking of. So when one falls from these lower planes, at the most, one slides down to the level of the ordinary gross conscious human, but no lower. That is, if one uses the powers of these lower planes and has to regress, retarded in one's onward advance, then from the first, second, or third plane, or analogically, from the ankle, knee, etc., one tumbles down to ordinary human form, gross consciousness, represented by the thumb toe. So much for the
Oops.
Maybe we could read this note. This is a substantive note, not
Okay.
textual.
Okay. In earlier lectures, see especially pages 243 to 44, Baba explained that pilgrims on the lower planes after death revert to gross consciousness and have to recapitulate their former spiritual progress again in their next lifetime. Perhaps that is what Baba means when he speaks of retarding and regression here. But read in its obvious sense, the text seems to be referring to something else. That is, a fallback to gross consciousness because of the abuse of spiritual powers. So much for the fourth plane. Now we arrive at the fifth, which corresponds to the windpipe, Galani Ganti. Falls from the first, second, third, and fourth planes we have discussed above. But with respect to the fifth plane, when a fifth planer leaves his body, he does not fall, but takes rebirth in the same plane. that he inhabited at the time of his previous death. Now, the sixth plane is associated with what we call the third eye, located at the center point between the two eyes. Be Ankh-ni Bakchova. One who leaves the body here in the sixth plane proceeds directly to the seventh plane, associated with the Brahman, or the crown of the head. Since the sixth,
Maybe we could read this. It's an interesting word. The bottom note here, Brahman.
okay, Brahman is a word with a wealth of meanings and profound spiritual and metaphysical resonance. It can refer to the universe or cosmos. Beyond this, it can refer to the cosmic egg, An, or the egg of Brahma, sometimes associated with Hiranyagarbha. And on a more material level, it can designate the crown of the head. For further information, see glossary.
Okay, we're up here.
One who leaves the body here in the sixth plane proceeds directly to the seventh plane associated with the Brahman, or crown of the head. Since the sixth plane is immediately linked with the seventh, just as the point between the eyebrows is with the crown of the head in the human body. Yet, even though the sixth plane is so directly connected with the Brahman in the seventh plane, even though they are so near to each other, yet to cross from here to here, from the sixth to the seventh, is most difficult. Why? Watch and see. If you mark it closely, all the movement that we have been describing from the first plane to the sixth, from the thumb toe to the point between the eyebrows, has been in one direction. That is straight vertical ascent. But such is not the case between the sixth and the seventh planes. Here, the direction changes. The course of movement takes a turn, and what a sharp and difficult turn it is. Indeed, one cannot accomplish this turn without the help of a Sadguru. Remember, all of this that I have been explaining serves only as an introduction to the main analogy that we will be going over tomorrow. If you don't bear this in mind, you might make the mistake of identifying the thumb toe with the human being, and so forth, in a literal way.
Okay. What do you think? We started a little bit late. And this next one is not that long, and we're trying to finish. Should we go on, or we want to stop at where what we've done?
I don't know. Does anybody have an opinion?
There's an awful lot of material in what we've covered.
Yeah, we really did. There's no doubt about that. Here's what we got. We have this, and then the 13th, and then the 14th. So we have 4 more to go.
Oh, we do? Well, then,
Yeah.
Northern California wants to continue per
Yeah.
Cliff Ives.
Yeah, I'm thinking let's save the last 4 for Sunday.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
I thought we had more than that. I lost track again.
Well, these were short.
Yeah, they
ones
were
today.
short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say you want to stop.
We did not read that brown part.
The
There's
figure.
a part we skipped.
Oh, yes, we
The key to the
probably-
figure,
we should
yeah.
read the,
Yeah.
key
There.
actually. Yeah. Okay.
Shall I read it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Key to figure 37. In his 6th and 7th January 28 lectures, Meher Baba correlated the 7 planes and the 7 skies or asmans with spots on the human anatomy. Though Baba's verbal explanations were doubtless accompanied by gestures as he pointed to parts of his body, none of our manuscripts provide an illustration. Figure 37 has accordingly been conceived and created as a visual aid by the artist-editor team according to its best understanding. In this 2 human figure illustration, the anatomical parts corresponding to the 7 planes are indicated on the man to the left, while the 7 skies or asmans are similarly marked on the man to the right. It should be recollected that the points corresponding to the skies are hollows in the body located beneath or possibly behind the body parts associated with the planes. The kingdoms of evolution are correlated with the 5 toes of the foot. Unfortunately, the manuscript sources for these 2 lectures are exceedingly corrupt. Several of the body part identifications in this figure are therefore speculative and could be erroneous. These problems are particularly acute regarding body parts associated with the 3rd and 4th planes and skies, and to a lesser extent, the 2nd and 5th. Readers are advised, therefore, to use this figure with caution and not without reference to the text of the lectures and the associated notes where the problems are discussed in detail.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So we looked at the lecture that talked about the planes here, right? So the next one is going to go up through the 7 skies and talk about body parts associated which are characteristically hollows in the body, which makes sense, right? It's not it's a hollow. Okay.
All right, well, shall we say the beloved's prayer and end this part of the session?
All right.
So let me let everybody unmute and go ahead and join us. Why don't you stop the share for a minute, Ward?
Okay.
There we go. Feel free to unmute and say the beloved's prayer with us. Beloved God,
God,
help us
To
all
love you
more and more and more and
Yes,
more,
still yet
Still
more.
yet
yet more,
worthy
worthy of union
Help
with
us
you.
all
help us all
Help us all to hold fast Baba's Dharma
till the very end.
till the very end. Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Thank you, Baba, for getting us through that. That was a rough one. So many surprises occurred. Okay,
Yeah.
let me stop the recording here.